Hey everybody, welcome to Everyone Else Has a Podcast with JD and Scott, and it's been a long time no see.
Yeah, it really has.
How long has it been since we've
since we
been
recorded?
Been with the people.
Since we recorded, it's been over 2 months.
A lot of things have happened in 2 months in 2020.
Yeah, it has been an eventful 2 months for sure.
Yes, to say the least.
And we talked about it briefly. It might be good that we didn't immediately make a podcast.
Probably so.
Because a lot of things have settled a certain way, too.
And it is good sometimes, I think, just a good rule of thumb, to let stories kind of play out and find out more information before you form hard opinions on things.
Yeah.
I think we have a culture that is really quick to jump to conclusions. And I think when we do that, when we make a habit of jumping to conclusions, we get ourselves in a lot of trouble as individuals, as families, as communities, as a culture. Yeah,
and I think that the culture right now, especially with social media and the immediacy of our phones, is, to borrow a quote from someone, I don't know who said it, but the goal is to be fast, not right. And our first not right, and it's just like get something out there. And then like you mentioned, you get something out there and someone wants to retract it. It's going to go on page 8 in a little blurb.
Right.
No one's going to take down the tweet. No one's going to take down the article. They're just going to say it somewhere quietly and move on.
Yeah, it's really scary. It's scary in the fact I think about our kids, the world our kids are growing up in, but so I'm not going to live in fear every day over it. But I am going to have to intentionally train and help my kids to understand this is the way that the culture is going. Don't just get in the river and float downstream with everybody else. You're going to have to go upstream and fight the current a little bit of going, all right, we're not just going to do what everyone else does. We're not going to just think the way that everyone else thinks. We're going to be critical thinkers and not just jump to conclusions. And hopefully they'll be able to save some friends in the process of going down that same, thought.
Yeah. Well, we
river.
do. We have the goals that we hear about, like where we should be slow to anger, slow to speak, but we're not doing that at all in our culture right now.
Yeah.
We're not. And there's really not any harm to take a second and think through what you want to say. This isn't something that I do a lot. Obviously.
Do as I say, not as I do.
But it's a goal. It's an aspiration. At least I'm aware, and I try to. And with social media and stuff. The default is to want to go right away or share the article based on the headline or jump in right away and say that you're with whatever cause that you're with. But you don't, if you took an extra couple of days to really look into it, or even just 5 minutes to think about it, pray about it if it's something you're saying or it could be hurtful. A lot of times when you write that draft and you wait a minute, you don't do it. Or like Dave Ramsey says, what he used to say, like if it was a big purchase, like wait a certain amount of time before you do it, and then most of the time you talk yourself out of it.
Yeah,
and I think that's wise, because most of the time we talk ourselves out of the drafts on Facebook, and it's for the better.
Yeah, and I think pride plays a really big part in that as well, because sometimes we'll say something, we'll spout something off, we'll join that that train, that wagon that everybody else is on. And then we kind of probably hit that moment of going, I wasn't 100% correct, or maybe I've got some other thoughts concerning this that are maybe a little bit contrary to what I first thought or said. But you've got to be humble enough to kind of retract some of maybe what you said or thought, and not just be so prideful that, well, I said it, so I'm just going to stick with it no matter what.
Right. Hard-headedness.
Yeah, there's a difference between sticking to your word and keeping your word when you told someone that you're going to do something, and then sticking to your word even though you were wrong.
Right.
And a lot of people don't want to retract. A lot of people don't want to say that they're sorry, I was wrong.
Yeah, they just entrench. But on the opposite side of that, and I'm sure that of the 7 people that watch this, 6 of them are going to be like, but wait a second, Scott. I still remember you causing arguments on the internet. And it's true. Some people will get the idea that you're just trying to start arguments, but you're not really trying to start arguments. You're just sharing something, and maybe you're sharing it in the wrong place, or you're sharing it at the wrong time, or you're sharing it in the wrong way, whatever. A part of saying that we're wrong is the responsibility of everybody else to say, we forgive you. It's okay. Not to hold that against you forever. And that's one of the problems with today's culture, is that people will look for things that you've done or said years ago, and then they'll be like, well, you're still exactly the same person as you were then. That's not true. Everybody is growing one way or another. We're growing down, we're growing up, we're getting worse, we're getting better, but we're not staying the same. So to try to hold someone accountable, tweets from when they were 13, or things that comedians said 10 years ago that were acceptable, that aren't acceptable now for some reason, depending on the issue. But you got to be able to say, everyone is different, and I'm going to give this person an opportunity to be humble without holding it against him. Because I think that's one of the reasons people don't want to back down. Because if you back down, then many times that's a sign that you're weak, and then the mob pounces on you.
Sure.
I said pounces. I don't know why I said it like that. They pounce on you, and so you end up getting this very never apologize mentality. But like many things in our culture, it's not a right or a left, or a liberal or conservative or whatever. It's like the right way. And the right way for Christians is to be more nuanced than that. I'm going to be humble, and I'm going to be forgiving. I'm not going to be one or the other. So, and even if you're not a Christian, it's still the right way to accept that people grow, to accept that people change, and to acknowledge when you make a mistake. Those are fundamental, I think, but they're things that maybe nowadays we're not allowed to do.
Yeah. So what are some things that are in our current news cycle right now?
Yeah.
Whether we've missed them in the last couple of months and haven't talked about it, or something that's going on currently that we want to share our opinions with one another today.
There are some things that we're not going to share our opinions about because they are
because we don't trust all of you to be forgiving.
We both need our jobs, and if we say something even a little bit wrong, we're not ally enough of something. So we're not going to get into some of those topics. Although
Scott's more afraid than I am.
Yeah, because I work for the man, and JD works for God, and that can't get fired from that. Right?
When I say I'm not afraid, I'm not saying I'm not afraid of God. I'm just saying I'm not afraid of people so much.
I'm joking. Everything I just said was a joke.
I just want to clarify that for people who don't understand our sarcasm. So, anyway.
No. Everything I'm saying is a joke about JD's job. But what I wasn't saying what I was not joking about is the fact that certain topics are just not safe to talk about. And so some topics we'll just have to revisit them when we have other when we're further down the road.
That's why we have the term silent majority.
It is true, and even if you're not a conservative this is something that's in the news. I saw some statistics, and I'm not prepared for it, but something like the only group, if you have far left progressives, moderate liberals, centrists, moderate conservatives, far right conservatives. If you take those 5 groups, the only group that feels it's safe to express their opinion are the far left progressives. Everybody else is self-censoring. And that is scary, right? So, but it is true that there is a kind of a self-censoring, being careful what you say. And it's too bad about that, because I do believe, as the ACLU used to say, we're going to defend everyone's right to free speech, even if we don't agree with it. Because if we say they can't say something because we don't like it, then the next thing you know, someone else will say that about you.
Right.
And so if you don't protect everyone's right to speak, and people say, well, people have freedom of speech, not freedom from consequences. Okay, but the consequences that are out there nowadays are not equivalent to the speech. Just because you disagree with someone politically doesn't mean that you should go and tag their house and stand in their front yard and give them life, threats on their lives, or try to get them fired. There's just no reason to do that. Yeah,
those are uncivil and unlawful consequences.
Yeah, and they don't follow freedom of speech. Now there's some things you say that are, deserve that. If you threaten someone's life, that's not freedom of speech anymore. But if you're just saying, I'm going to vote for XYZ, so?
I'll give you an example that pops in my head. So let's rewind a few years back to the Colorado baker who wouldn't bake the cake for the homosexual couple. Okay, so no matter where you side with same-sex marriage, that baker should have every right to, have his business open to whoever he wants to have it open to. That also might mean he suffers the consequences that some people may not patronize his business.
That's right.
Because he has this specific stance. But that's his choice. It's his right. And so, it's the same as it's the same-sex couple's same choice and right to get married. And he's not going to show up and protest their marriage. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it doesn't really matter where you side on that specific issue. You should be able to have still freedom of speech. And again, that might mean certain consequences for them.
Yeah.
But the government should not have to mandate you bake a cake for them.
Yeah, and I have the new phrase over the last couple of years that I've been hearing a lot is called classic liberal, and that's the kind of liberal that is like a free speech absolutionist and absolutist. They're like they're abolishing free speech. No, but it's kind of this idea that says you can believe whatever you want. And many of the people I know, in fact, one of the people in my family said, and she's very pro gay marriage, and she just said, no, I believe he has the right to refuse to make that cake, but I hope he goes out of business. Okay, that's okay with me, and I think that's okay for quite a lot of things,
right.
Because even if you just look at a church or anything else, everyone has a set of beliefs. And if you don't like the beliefs of that person, okay, then you don't have to give them your money, But one of the downsides I see to this right now is that, and it's not a left thing, it's a right thing too, where people will say, well, I don't want to do business with XYZ. I'm going to keep saying XYZ because
I think I started that, but anyway.
Well, I'm going to keep saying it, whatever group it is, and then you'll see, like, say, conservatives being, I'm gonna no longer do business with them because they give money to that progressive thing. But if you work for a corporation, you realize corporations give money to everybody, and they do that because money equals influence, and they want influence with whomever is in power. And furthermore, most of the big companies, they will match a certain amount of your donations,
sure,
because they need a certain amount of write-offs, and it's also a differentiator when it comes to employment. And so, at my work, a friend of mine and we both do the matching things. On the topic of abortion, I give to a charity that is about abortion awareness and in the life of the child, and obviously I'm hoping people don't choose abortion. And she's choosing Planned Parenthood. We're still friends, and my company is matching both of us. So if we were to go and say, I'm not going to do business with anybody that gives money to someone I don't agree with, frankly, we won't have anybody to do business with. And so that's one of those eye for eye makes everyone blind in one eye kind of thing. And I feel like that we just need to walk away from that ledge and just say people are people.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point about corporations. Just their goal, really, for most of them, especially the ones that have been established for a long, long time, their goal hasn't been to be socially responsible. Their goal has been to make money. And you can disagree with me on this point if you can. I give you permission to disagree.
Thank you.
But a couple of years ago, I think I was scrolling through Instagram, and there was an ad for Kellogg's for Frosted Flakes, and Tony the Tiger was there, and it was during Pride Month, and his red bandana that he normally wears was rainbow colored. Mm-hmm. I saw that, and I was just very, caught off guard by that, and I just started thinking that I was like, does Kellogg's really care about LGBTQ issues, or does Kellogg's care about getting a piece of the market?
Yeah.
And I have to be honest in the way that I think they're just because what the example that you just gave me of you support this company, your friend who has a different values supports this organization, and your corporation matches donations to both.
Right.
And so, and it's a large corporation. Kellogg's is a very large corporation. They're about influence. They're about market share.
Yeah, I mean, well, and corporations aren't these big monster, automatons. These are people that their goal is to make money, because if you make money working for the company makes money, you make money.
Right.
And so all of us are in the business of making money. Like I wouldn't do my job if I wasn't paid. And most people wouldn't.
What?
I know, right? So I need my company to do well so that I can continue to get paid. And so that's what's in my best interest, is to continue to do it. And but there is a certain question about whether or not companies really believe the things they do, and by the way, I would be okay if companies did not spend so much time on social issues, because I believe it can be divisive, very divisive. Look at what happened with Google, with James Damore, and then you had conservatives suing them, saying that it was a hostile work environment. And I would prefer us not to do that. Every time I've ever been hired, the first day on the job, HR shows us a video from the 80s or something, and they start talking about football, and you're like, this is something we shouldn't talk about because football and sports can be divisive. And we don't, and you're like, okay, well, if me liking the Rams and someone else liking the Titans can be divisive when I remind them about how we won the Super Bowl 20 years ago, if that's divisive, and you're not supposed to talk about politics or religion or anything else, then why are the corporations doing it? Because I feel like it just creates an environment where everyone's being divisive.
I can tell you why. Money.
Right. Well, but I did tell you, and I forget which company it was. It was a software company, video game software company. And for Pride Month, they changed their logo to the rainbow logo in every European and Western nation. But then when you got to certain Middle Eastern countries, they did not change the logo. So that, to me, speaks to the decision to do in that market what will sell in that market.
Right, exactly.
More than a belief, because a belief is something that you hold regardless of whether you'll make money. So when you hear about China and the concentration camps that they've got, there's videos of people being shaved heads, masks on, sitting in rows of thousands, being taken to concentration camps. When you see a video like that, and then you hear the NBA saying, well, we don't really want to get involved with that. Well, then you don't really care about people, do you? About oppressed minorities. Because if you did, you'd care about them everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you did care about the plights of LGBTQ people, you would care about the places where they can be killed just for simply existing. And they don't seem to. So it seems to be about the dollar, not about the actually caring about people.
Yeah. And then speaking of the NBA...
We can talk about the NBA.
What's painted on the court right now?
Yeah, Black Lives Matter is painted on the court, and people are allowed to have hashtags on the back. I think it was Marcellus Wiley made a great point. He said he didn't think it was a good idea, and I'm quoting, because what's going to happen when someone wants to put something on their jersey that doesn't match with the current agenda? What if someone wanted to put Free Hong Kong? And we already know how China feels about the NBA. They're not going to do that, right? So it's not about actually expressing what people want to express. Someone says, some pro-life phrase on the back will not get to be there. And so what you end up having then is you have free speech on one side. Or in other words, you have coordinated speech. It's not free. You can only say certain things. To me, that's just divisive. And so it is all about profits, and we can pretend that it's not, but it is. Some people really do care about things. When you work in a corporation, we all have things we care about. But most people just want to do their job and go home to their family. And if the corporation can make more money by putting up a different flag this month, then they will.
I saw a recent tweet. I think someone else had retweeted, so I don't recall who it was from. But they said, if you were to go to China, North Korea, and maybe somewhere else, let's just randomly just say Russia, and talk out and speak out against these issues in their version of them, you're very likely to be picked up and not heard or seen from in a long, long, long time.
Yeah.
But in America, we're able to say something about these issues. If we want to continue to have that right, that freedom of speech in America, and not be just snatched up and not be seen and be locked up for a decade, then we need to make sure that everybody has an equal right to speak, and that that we can have difference of opinions, and even the idea of hate speech. I don't think it's productive when people have say things that are hateful toward any particular other group. I think that's very unproductive. I don't think it really does anything to prop up your stance, whatever that might be. And sometimes your stance is just absolutely absurd and ridiculous to begin with. But I still want to protect people's right to speak, even if it's contrary to what I think or believe, because then who's to say one day what I think or believe is not going to be considered as acceptable speech, and that'll be censored.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't
occurred to me to hear someone, and this is just me, but it hasn't occurred to me to hear someone give a different opinion and me say, arrest them. You can't have that opinion. It occurs to me to say, that's dumb. Your opinion is dumb, and I disagree with your opinion. Maybe I'll argue with you about your opinion, but it just doesn't occur to me to have people arrested. And I think that's I think our current hyperbole in our nation right now is based on the idea that so many people have such small perspectives. We don't really know what it looks like to live in an authoritarian nation. We don't really know what it's like to have the loss of free speech. We don't really know. And I think, I think about this sometimes, and I wish that we had more people really understanding some of those cautionary tales, those older books. And I know that not all the old books were books that I was excited to read, but books like 1984 and books like Fahrenheit 451, Animal Farm, these are books that are they've lasted for a long time through actual Cold War, through actual authoritarian regimes, where people alive at that time were able to look at that and say, oh, I know what you're saying here. But the people alive right now, most of us don't know what that's like. And so we don't have the perspective. We think because a police officer comes and arrests me because I'm, rioting, that somehow this is the same thing as Hitler. And I'm like, I don't even think you understand that them coming and arresting you and then booking you and then giving you a criminal trial, and in most cases letting you go without any kind of bail, that's not the same thing.
No.
And if you get held down while your hands are tied behind your back and you're led to a van, that's not the same thing as what happens in these other countries. And it breaks my heart to see videos of people from Venezuela and from Cuba talk about what life is actually like there, North Korea. And I just think that if we had more perspective, if the younger generation, it's weird to say that, but the people that are 20s and 30s, if they had more perspective, I think it would make a big difference for them to be able to see, oh yeah, you know what? These are precious rights. These aren't rights that are given to us by our country. These are, like you said, they're rights given to us by God. I think you said that last time we talked, but our country recognizes those rights, and that's precious, and we need to not get rid of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to the list.
We had topics that we were allowed to talk about. I don't know if we want to talk about masks. I made a post about that on Facebook. I feel pretty strongly about, in line with what Pastor Dan said, an abundance of charity. Some people are worried about it. Some people are not.
I did hear something today. I didn't have time to verify this in the news. But I did hear, by the way, we're in Scott's dining room at his house, and so
apparently you can still hear people upstairs.
Life is just going on as normal, and that's okay. It's totally okay. But that's again, we're not in some soundproof studio.
There's no aliens or children stuck in the closet. That Harry Potter is older now. He doesn't live under the stairs anymore.
I heard that there were 2 Chinese students, different parts of the country, different incidences. And I think the 2 boys, about 14 years in age, they were doing some kind of school activity, maybe running track or something like that.
Okay.
And wearing masks while they were running.
That seems harsh.
And they both collapsed dead. And you think, well, that's crazy. That's absurd. And I've seen the videos on Facebook where someone goes out and they check their oxygen levels, and their oxygen level's great, and then they put a mask on and they go jogging for 30 minutes and they check their oxygen levels, and it's the exact same. Totally get that. But what about people who have undiscovered health issues, underlying health issues that they don't know about? And they refused to do autopsies on these boys to find out whether or not any kind of extra CO2 was the cause of some kind of heart issue for the heart failure. And so I'm thinking about, what about all of our children who are sitting in classrooms all day now? Because my two girls went back to school yesterday. Mm-hmm. This is what's today? Tuesday the 27th, 28th?
I think 28th.
Yeah, Tuesday the 28th is when we're recording this today. Yesterday, my two girls went back to school. I know it's still July, but this is their school schedule. And they're having to sit in school all day with masks on. And we've never tested our kids to see if they have some kind of underlying heart issue. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little alarming. It's a little scary when you think about that. I'm a little bit more along the lines of let's be charitable toward others. So today I went to the doctor, just have a routine stuff going on. Nothing abnormal. I have nothing to report to you about my health. Just there. And I took a mask with me in case I were to be required to put it on. Mm-hmm. And so I walked into the doctor's office, and a couple people in the waiting room had masks on. One had it full on. Another person kind of had it like right here. Mm-hmm. And they were looking at me, and I had the mask, and I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking, I'm willing to put this on, especially if the lady behind the counter asked me to do so. I'll be happy to put it on because I'm just going to go and sit in the waiting room. I'm not going out jogging or anything. And nobody, asked me to put it on. I sat down. I didn't start getting dirty looks, but this one guy did start eyeballing me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I was getting ready to put the mask on for the exact same reasons we talked about a couple months ago, to be charitable toward people, right? And he started up a conversation with me about my shoes. He saw my shoes, and he liked my shoes, and he says, "Hey, man, I like your shoes." And so we started talking about sneakers. Mm-hmm. And he didn't care at all that I didn't have a mask on. I just thought that was kind of interesting. And another guy came in after me, and he didn't have a mask on either. But I'm willing to do that for that sake. I don't know that I saw a really great post from a friend of ours recently. And in one corner of the photograph, I had a guy wearing a mask that looked like a firefighter's mask, full on oxygen. And then in the other corner had somebody wearing a full on hazmat suit. Mm-hmm. And another corner was like a SWAT officer that had on a tear gas mask. And he just said, until I see people on the street corners, like government kind of officials, running around in these all day, then I don't think we have anything to worry about. And this guy is actually not just some random dude. He actually is an authority on the issue in this area of wearing masks. So anyway, so the mask thing, I see that it's fine to be charitable toward people. I don't have any problem with it for that. The problem that I have with masks is that it plays along with a narrative that I disagree with.
Yeah.
And if we are going to look at science and we're going to look at the numbers for what we've collected over the last several months over COVID, it just science is telling us that this thing is not as crazy as we are reacting to it. Not even close.
Well, that's a good point. And when this first started, we didn't know.
We didn't. We had no idea.
And I think most of us still don't know. And I think that's been one of the things that's kind of hard to blame politicians for 100% is like, what? Well, he could have done this, he could have done that. Well, of course, yeah, and you know, and I could have won the Super Bowl if I, you know, if only I, you know, we can look back on things and say, if I was just a little bit this or a little bit that,
right? Totally.
And it's not fair because nobody alive right now has gone through a pandemic,
right?
And so as much as we said we're going to learn from it, it's been a whole 100 years. And the information we had is old. So we get the news that this is going to be a devastating thing, and it has been, because every life matters, and in every life lost to COVID matters. And so that wasn't a political
right. That
thing.
You're literally saying
I was saying that
matters.
Every one of these people
not a
passed
hashtag.
away. No hashtags here. No. But the longer we go on, and the more we learn about it, the more it seems like that if you're not of a certain age, and if you're not in a certain health risk category, you could still pass away. You could still have significant, but it's very unlikely, and more unlikely than a lot of other things that we don't do the whole shut down the world thing for.
Right.
And so this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is just, you know, look at what's happened, you know. But the news is making it into something really big, which is unfortunate because, you know, the way it spurs the fires of this. We used to have like a year where everything was about politics. That was the year the president was going to be elected. Now we have 4 years completely all political for the last 4 years. Every single thing, news, sports, everything is political, and they won't stop with sharing what their opinions are about things. And so I see people gleefully excited about, you know, more people in Florida are getting sick, like Cuomo. Governor Cuomo in New York is like mocking DeSantis, and it's only politics, and to get the eyes off of Cuomo, who made some terrible mistakes that he should have not known about. Right. You know, if we already knew from the very beginning older people were more susceptible, he shouldn't have sent those people back to the nursing homes. But they have so many deaths in New York, and so many deaths and I read something, and I told you about this a couple days ago. In Florida, they'd have to have like 3 times as many deaths as they have right now for a whole year, every day for a year, or something stupid high like that, to get to the number that New York had. But if you read the news, DeSantis and Florida are the evilest people most evil people in the whole world, and New York is a success. And I'm like, it's not a success. More people die in New York. And some people might say, well, New York is so big and crowded. Well, Florida has more people than New York. So does Texas. Some of it is more spread out. That's true. But New York isn't all the city. Just, you know, right. Just like California is not all Los Angeles. You know, there's a big city. That's true. But there's a lot of not big city as well. And so just to compare those, I think it is less dangerous for normal people than we thought it would be, which goes to conclude this part of the conversation. But and if that's the case, then we probably don't have to worry about wearing a mask for most people. But I still find myself saying, other than getting pimples, which I do get pimples when I wear the mask.
Sure, I just had a conversation with someone earlier today. Same thing. Yeah.
Other than getting pimples, I'm willing to get the pimple so that someone else will be comfortable, and if that's the price I pay. Now, I don't have asthma. I don't have anything like that, and we don't know what happened in China, but they have really bad air quality, so they might not have had good air to start with.
They don't.
Right.
In the cities, they certainly don't.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't really know, but for me, I will. But one thing I'd like to see stop is I'd like to see people stop giving you looks, one way or the other.
Right, one way or the other.
One way or the other. But I love your story. Let me go a little bit different. Your story brings up a good point, because with all the divisiveness that's going on right now, it is hard to look at someone and not wonder if the worst possible thoughts are going through their heads. Does this person not like me because I'm not wearing a mask? Does this person judge me because I am wearing a mask? When I wore a mask to church a couple weeks ago, I was the only one wearing a mask to church. I was coughing that morning. I wore a mask to church. I got looks. What's up with you? You're not one of us? I don't know. You know, or they could have been looking at my shoes. I have no way to know. But with the divisiveness in our country, every time I walk into a store, I see people walking out and I'm wondering what they're thinking. And I'm starting to think of them as separate and as other and as different. And I think that that's happening everywhere, between different colors of skin, between men and women, between young people, older people, between mask wearers, not mask wearers. Trump signs, Bernie signs, Biden signs. Everyone's different now. Everyone's other. And frankly, I liked it better when I could just walk into a store and see someone, make eye contact, say, "What's up?" Keep walking and not wonder, does that person not like me because I'm not wearing a mask today? Is this person judging me because, the color of my skin, or am I judging them because of the color of their skin, and so on? I just feel like the current environment is so divisive, and I feel like that's an incredible shame.
Another good piece of information we have not talked about before. I watched a video about this today. It was a panel of doctors that were, I didn't watch the entire thing, but I did see this one clip where a pediatrician got up. This guy has been in private practice for 36 years. And he says, the good news is that this has not been, talking about COVID has not been transmitted between children like we thought it was going to be.
Well, good.
We thought we thought that children would be the primary transmitters between one another and between other people, that we thought, and it hasn't happened. And he said, he went on to say some other things, but the thing that stood out to me the most, he says, there's not one documented case in the entire world that a student has transmitted COVID to their teacher.
Well, that's great news.
There's not one documented case. That's great news.
Yeah.
So he was basically making the case for, we need to get our kids back in school. And obviously, we do need to use common sense and best practices and use wisdom, as we should have been doing before all of this started anyway, right?
Yeah.
Our society is far more advanced than it was 100 years ago, and society 100 years ago was far more advanced than it was 100 years before that, as far as hygiene goes specifically. And so, I really don't think that the world is ever going to face another Black Plague again. That's my own personal thought. I think we all were afraid of this. Is it possible? I think it's possible, but it's not because it'll be because of, some kind of viral warfare. I mean, the Ebola virus is, an awful thing. It's very serious. It's very deadly. But COVID is not anything close to that. Not even close. And if we can keep the Ebola virus contained in wherever their outbreaks are. Last time I heard of an outbreak in the Congo. If we can get that contained there and it not spread all over the world, great. But something that's basically a little bit more serious than the flu, then we're going to be okay.
Yeah, well, there's been some really dangerous things that have come up. Swine flu, bird flu, and those are very dangerous things, and they are lethal in many cases.
Sure.
And yet, to your point, we were able to, as a society, and I mean the whole world as a civilization, a large scale, I'm speaking, stop that before it got out of control. And that doesn't mean that it was in control while it was killing the amount it did kill, which is obviously horrible again. But the fact of the matter is that 100 years ago, that would have been devastatingly more people passing away. And probably this would have been too, with the COVID-19. And you're right. I think things are going to go better and better and better, which I think is probably true of most things. I'm not exactly worried about global warming. I try to explain to my kids that we've been scared about the environment since I was a kid, for 40 years. And I've been hearing about the hole in the ozone and global warming, and everything is going to get terrible, and everything, we're all going to die in 8 years. That's what they keep saying all the time. But the fact of the matter is that assumes that we're not going to get more technologically advanced. That assumes that we're not going to be able to figure it out. And yet humans have been figuring it out for thousands and thousands of years. As things have happened, we've adapted to what the situation is. I was reading someone, he said, I'm not worried about global climate change. He said if the snow caps melt, the Arctic melts, we'll probably just build seawalls around the bigger cities. Like, we wouldn't just sit there and say, oh no, the water's coming up, we're all going to die, and then just watch it while the water raises slowly over the course of 50 years and drowns a city. No one's going to do that, right? I mean, because we're not talking about, like this all happening in 1 second, like somehow all the ice is thawed immediately, Thanos does that, and then all of the cities are flooded. I mean, we're talking about the ice slowly going. And do you think we can't build a seawall around Manhattan? Why can't we? Who said we can't do that? And in some of the low-lying areas, I mean, Washington D.C. was a swamp at one point,
right?
And it's not anymore. You think we're going to let it get flooded because of the sea levels rising? No, we're not going to let it. And so I'm not saying that it won't be disruptive. What I'm saying is I believe that humans who are endowed with the image of God, a creative God, we can use our creativity and we can solve that problem. So just like the medicine and everything else, I think we can solve most of the things that are there. I don't think we're going to become a utopia because I believe individual humans are inherently evil. I believe that selfish. All of us are selfish. But as a whole, that selfishness works to our advantage in terms of keeping civilization alive.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone wants to live, so our selfishness works. Isn't that the invisible hand of the capitalist economy? Who was that said that?
Adam Smith
or someone.
Oh.
And it's like this invisible hand that like moves capitalism forward for everybody, making it better for everybody. The idea, and I might be quoting this wrong, but the idea of my selfishness, my selfish desire to make money off of you is, and your selfish desire to get stuff from me for money, works together to make society work better. And so there's this, like, even though we're both selfish, which is the reality of humans, right? It still builds society up. And if you look at it, capitalism has transformed this world.
Well, all right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Everyone Else Has a Podcast. We are going to do our very best to not go another 2 months without having an episode.
We're going to fight busy.
Yeah, we're going to fight busy. Yeah. We're going to be intentional. But anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Maybe someday you'll have a podcast too.